So I have a presentation. Okay, this is a scratch build that I did. Thurston's Bait and Tackle. It's in O scale. It's in my Shantytown. I have featured part of this a couple years ago, but this is the complete build here. This is the Thurston's Bait and Tackle. Um, all my all my fishing bait and tackle shops are named after Gilligan's Island because I take this hobby so seriously. So in the background, you have Gilligan's 3-hour tour bait shop. This one's Thurston's Bait and Tackle, and the other characters are featured to the left and right of this. But this one's one of my most interesting for me scratch builds. It's a neat little building, and it it's quite small, but there's a lot of detail on it, and it's just an attractive little model. It's built on a plywood base, a little 1/8 inch plywood, 4.5 inches wide, 2.5 inches in depth. It's O scale, it's just very small. Um, this was the extent of my planning right here that you're seeing. I thought I'd have a main building, and then off to the left and right, I'd have 2 sheds. That was the extent of my planning on this one. I thought I'd use this Mount Albert. It's my choice material. Go Canada, right? Um, basswood sheets. This is the clapboard siding. Um, very accurate. There isn't much to the main building. Interesting enough, I had to slot this, which is a little unusual. Um, and the Mount Albert siding is not sufficient height, so I had to make this two-piece and super glue it together. So you can see the two colors of wood here. So basically, you just have to pay attention to the joint here, but you'll see you can't. I almost couldn't find it on the ones that are at 12 o'clock and 6 o'clock, but you can see it here because it's two different colors of wood. But that's common construction uh, when you don't have sufficient height. Yeah. Again, I always mount when I do these layouts. I just use a modeler square and a ruler, and I always mark them up unless it's blatantly obvious, like the one on the right, what's up and what's down. But you want to avoid gluing things upside down, which I've done that a couple times. I haven't done it once since I've started labeling them up with an arrow. So those are those same pieces now with the cutouts. And this just went right together. Again, I use 1/4 inch material to secure everything so we won't get any warpage at all. So sitting on a plywood base with this 1/4 inch material with such a small structure, it's extremely robust. Now, the neat thing about scratch building, I don't own a laser. Um, you don't have to pay too much attention to these corners. I wouldn't say they're sloppy, but I don't, as long as they're close, that's good enough because it's going to get trimmed out. So, um, and then I use this acrylic black paint to paint the inside because I have no plans to do an interior. And if you look through the windows, you won't see anything. So that's just standard operating procedure with me. And this is the blackest of black. There's no flatter black than this acrylic paint, and it's cheap, inexpensive. Just more pictures with the sheds to the left and right. If you'll notice, these are a different material. This is a vertical siding. This is horizontal. I do that to add a little variety, a little different look to the building. Just make it a little more visually interesting. And then I wanted to make this one a blue color, so I found this folk art paint, Skyline. Um, again, this is the base color, and I've referred to this as the obnoxious stage of these builds of mine because the finished color looks nothing like the base color. There you can see the blackest of black, that flat acrylic paint is, there's no better flat than that. I try to match the siding up so that the they're even with one another here. So in other words, this piece of siding matches this piece of siding and so forth. It's a little detail that when I look at a scratch build, I always see if they do that. This covers two things here. I used a 1/16 inch plywood sheathing for the roofs. I knew I was going to shingle things and I wanted a pretty substantial, strong roof, but I wanted it to be made out of plywood. I use super glue in my construction, and you can see that this is 1x4 scale material painted. So I sort of skipped some photos. Speaking of taking photos between steps, Mr. Cassidy, I should have did that. But basically, I painted everything. I painted that blue white right over it. Then I went with a wire brush, a fine steel wire brush, because I wasn't getting the effect with my brass wire brush. I went with a steel wire brush and I scratched the crap out of it to get most of that white off, but it toned down the that obnoxious blue. And you can also see I used a Ponce wheel here to simulate nail holes. So there's a lot of things going on here. This trim was pre-painted white and then stained with a alcohol wash, a black wash. Then I put it on. Um, and I put that trim on after I scratched it with the wire brush. For the roof, I wanted to use these shake shingles, which are nothing more than a heavy, like a cardstock, a matte cardboard type material. I have packages and packages of these, and I never use them because I didn't think they would be. They just don't look out of the. They don't look anything like this photograph. They come out of the package looking like this, and to me that just didn't look very realistic. But I thought, I'll give it a try and see if I can work it. So I used these craft paints, white and gray. Oop, sorry. And I put them on a pad to paint them. I rubber cemented them down so they would move around. And then with a sponge, a natural sponge, I put down, first I painted them gray with a brush, got a uniform coat of gray on there. Then with a sponge, natural sponge, I sponged the white on there, and it came out really nice. There's a close-up of the siding. See the scratches in the wood and the Ponce wheel. These are actually HO scale windows and a Grant line door. I sprayed everything. I take all the windows. They're all injection molded styrene. I put them on a blue painter's tape, take it out to the garage, and I like this Krylon chalky finish. It's almost like well, it's chalky, so it has when you stain it, there it is finished on the left, just as sprayed, and on the right is with the alcohol wash. Because it's chalky, it seems to have some sort of porosity to it, and it just makes for a nice look. I mean, it's a really nice look. It holds up to scrutiny if we enlarge that. and just a very nice look. The chalk finish with Krylon, and they have a variety of colors. Should experiment with this paint. It's a nice paint. It's like a pre-weathered paint, and then when you add your alcohol washes or Hunterline stains, it comes out very nice, nice even look to it. There we are. You can see the roof up top. Those shingles came out really nice. I went back with a brush and um, added a little variation in color, some browns and some darks, just very light. And then I put a corrugated roof here. This was from my scrap bin. I just had some pieces of actual metal from a previous build. There's those Ponce wheel lines. That's something you can do in seconds that adds a lot of detail to this. I put one right down the center, and then I put them uh, off to the left and right. I think I actually tried to do a 16-inch center here, or 24-inch here. I don't remember, but I just balanced it. And then these signs are straight off the internet, you know, and I just print them on regular paper. I sand the back to they're very thin, and then with Elmer's glue, I just glue them on, and then I weather them with pan pastels. You see the window detail below the window is where like there's a runoff here, there's a little run, these are supposed to be metal signs, so there's a little runoff here of the metal, little rusty color. So there's a difference. These windows don't rust, they have just dirt rolling off of them. These are actual metal signs, and they're supposed to be metal, little rust running down. I just think it's a really attractive little building, you know, and I'm happy with all the materials I used here. I'm shocked at how nice those shingles came out. They're so inexpensive, but they look great. And the Mount Albert siding, you know, base coat with a obnoxious blue. Then I painted it with a white, and then I scratched the crap out of it. And when you scratch it and then you put the alcohol wash on it, the alcohol wash goes into the scratches and gives you this weathered look. So it's an effortless way to get a weathering technique, and I've never missed with it. It looks this way every single time. It just it's an easy way to get a really nice look to things with really no effort. I decided to put a couple shutters here. I scratch build these. These are just a little piece of plywood with 1x2s. And then I just painted them, and I had this one flopping in the wind. This is more of that actual metal siding. All HO scale windows on my O scale building. Again, the Ponce wheels there. Another nice look at those shingles. This is a nice little detail you can do, just add variation to your model. Instead of having a window there, I thought I'd show it boarded up. Again, this is a nice little detail you can do with virtually no effort. Just take a little piece of 1/16 inch plywood, some 1x2s, way you go. It's just something seldom modeled, but makes for a nice look. That's it. Next up, I had to put the platform on. So I don't really have a build of this, but this is all stick build, and I tried to make no board longer than 8 feet. So if you see, there's a board here, a board here, you know, a board here, a board here. So you don't, if you're building this, don't put one long runner here. A piece of wood that would be, you know, 4, 8, 16, 24 feet long would be unrealistic. Just break it up. And these are dowel rods that are simply scored. Oh, Jesus thing. Sorry. Yeah. These are simply dowel rods that I scored. Everything stained with a Hunterline stain, multiple stains, so you have variation in the colors. And again, you don't want to run a board from the beginning of this, the front to the back. I went to the trouble of putting joists in here, and the boards break on the joists. Now I wanted to super detail this thing because it's going to be right up front of the layout. So I wanted to put a variety of super detailed parts on there. So these are combination of resin, plaster, cast metal. So there's a couple garbage cans. This is a cast metal brick smoke chimney. This is a workbench. This is from Art Deco. These are cast plaster. Some resin. These are flipped the wrong way, but these are the tires. This is metal. Anyway, there's looking down at the quote super detailing of this model. Um, these are artista figures. Shantytown in the background there. All kinds of trash here to the left, washed up on shore. Remember, this side of the layout, for those of you who have visited know that it's just 1930, the height of the Great Depression. Everything's just beat. You can see how I weathered these. When this deck was all put in place, I went in with an X-Acto knife, sharp blade, and I cut these boards up, and I put in knot holes. These are actual. You just take your knife and you go around the 360, around and around and around, cut these little knot holes in. You can see the beams here. You know, the for the decking, and just a very nice little scene, nice little model. These are from Frenchman River Model Works, these tires. I just drilled holes in them with a pin vise and with a just a twine. I super glued it on the inside there. It's sort of out of focus, but there's barnacles on these posts. That's just ballast that's painted gray and white. Yeah, there's a little better shot. A nice little scene. Anything that holds up to that magnification is good. Look at that siding. I'm telling you, that was virtually no effort. That's blue acrylic paint, white acrylic paint, scratched with a steel brush, black alcohol wash, and then some minor um, pan pastels. That's a nice look for really no effort. Look at it, looks like wood. Yeah. There's the workbench. That's really high magnification. Little white bird droppings on there. A nice little touch if you're ever doing this. That's the overall scene. Remember, on Gilligan's 3-hour tour, he has free fishing tips. And Thurston, some fortunes go up, some go down. He wound up here, Thurston Howell the third. Yeah, and that's the overall scene there. So that's what basically what people see when they one of the first that's the first one of the first things they see when they walk into my layout room. So I wanted to hit them with a lot of detail. Okay.
Yeah, Tom,
Yeah,
couple questions. Whose door did you use on that building?
I think it was Grant Line. I don't
I
I
don't
only
remember.
it might be Titchy then.
Okay. And how does the chalk paint compare to the matte crackle medium?
Say that again.
How does the chalk paint that you used
Oh, the
compare
chalk
to
paint. Yeah.
crackle medium for getting peeling and paint effect.
Well, the chalk
And
paint is a flat, and when you touch it, it feels like it's porous. So, I mean, it's like a chalk paint. So it's a crackle paint would be a different animal. The advantage of the chalk paint is it has this something that like the hunter line or the elk can bite to.
Mhm.
It almost absorbs it. It's a weird thing, but it's a nice finish for us modelers. Yeah.
Hmm. Never heard of that chalk paint before. That's kind of cool.
Yeah, Krylon, they have about half a dozen colors.
Mm, okay.
So it's just a really flat paint, which is usually got like, geez, I forget. It's a powder substance in it that
Yeah.
gives it flatness.
It almost
Mm.
feels like it has, right, like it has plaster of Paris, and it would be the analogy. That's what it feels like. Like there's a,
Mm.
Sodium,
it,
but that's not either. I forget what it is because they use it in automotive stuff too.
yeah, it's a nice paint.
Mm.
Any other questions?
So Tom, how does that? How do you feel about that compared to dry brushing? Do you dry brush much stuff when you're weathering that?
Yes, but those shingles were dry brushed. When I went to a base color of gray, then I sponged it with white, and then I dry brushed other grays and dark browns on there. So those were dry brushed. But dry brushing is much trickier than pan pastels. Everybody can be an expert with pan pastels. Dry brushing requires a little more talent, I would say. It's you got to be careful with it. You'll put too much paint on there, and the pan pastels are much more forgiving. Yeah. And,
So the
and so,
no,
yeah.
you use is the white covering over the blue then?
I just painted that straight up solid white, and then I went back and scratched it off.
But you use the pan pastel to do that then? I
No,
missed
no.
that.
I used I used acrylic white paint for that and just scratched it off. So what I did is, now that I remember, I hit it with that obnoxious blue. Then I sprayed it with dull coat,
There you go.
and then I painted it with the a white acrylic paint. Then I scratched the white paint off.
Mhm.
Well, a lot of it, and it left that scratchy, weathered look to it. And then I didn't use Hunter line at that time. I used a straight up alcohol wash, and I got that technique. It looked like it was 100 years old. Yeah.
Yeah, the trick is the dog coat in between.
Yeah, I forgot to mention that.
Yeah, because if you do acrylic on acrylic, you won't get that effect.
No, it'll just tear everything off. Yeah.
Right,
So you need a boundary between the two.
right.
So sometimes I'll use some 80 grit sandpaper to accomplish that also.
Yeah, you just got to watch you don't remove the siding
Yeah.
too much. Yeah. Now you can use sandpaper too,
Hmm.
but the wire brushes gave me that nice wood grain on there.